Right, hello. Sorry, we're running a little bit late. Thanks so much for coming. Welcome to our first Rezzed session of EGX Rezzed 2019. I am John. Thank you. Sorry, you don't need to applaud me. I'm not giving this session. My name is John T. I'm from Rezzed. I'm just here to introduce our first speaker today, which is Simon from Roll7. He's here to talk a bit about how that studio has run. Roll7, obviously. I've had some great success in the last couple of years with titles like OlliOlli and Laser League, and he's here to chat about how they do that as a remote studio and why, in fact, as a studio, you don't need to spend that space at all. So please welcome Simon from Roll7.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody. It's always good to be the first person to talk. I have just come out of a bout of massive flu. So waking up this morning at about 5, realizing that I'm just about human, meant that I can be here to speak to you today. So I've infused this talk with a lot of video because I've realized that that means that there's whole chunks where I don't have to say anything. So I hope that that's going to be interesting for you guys. I'm not going to waffle on for too much, but I will waffle on a bit more at the end. My talk is this. You've read that, so I don't need to talk any more about that. Simon Bennett. I'm the director of Roll7. Has anyone heard of Roll7, the studio? Yeah, 2 or 3 people? Okay, cool. My background is actually music. I started in doing music stuff and education, and then film things, and then ended up making video games. It's been a long and weird checkered route to making video games. But I'm here today to talk to you about remote development. So how we make games, why we've come to make games remotely, a bit of a history of the studio, and hopefully like some lessons for people who are maybe thinking of doing remote development themselves, maybe who already have a studio and looking to do remote work as part of that, or maybe you're looking to get into the industry and you don't want to physically turn up to an office every day. Hopefully I can cover that. So it'd be really good just to get an idea, just a raise of hands of who's actually here. Is anyone here who's a student of video games? A couple of students. Anybody here from studios? Run your own studios, kind of? And then, okay, that's quite a few. And then people who are just interested generally in video games and are just at Rezzed. Okay, awesome. For those people who have a studio, have you released games before? Awesome. Yeah. And of those sort of games, are they sort of 10,000 units or under, or 100,000 units, or 1 million units? 1 million units plus. Okay, right. So we have the range of everybody here, which is awesome. So I can't now lie because obviously you know all about this. So Roll7. Our studio is now 10 years old, and we began as essentially an incubated project within an education company that I was running in Southeast London. Our creative director, John, was running a video games education course for our education company, and he just happened to be really clever, really interesting. We got on really well, and we thought, well, let's make video games. It seems like a logical step. We're already doing music, photography, film, animation, web design, and a number of different creative disciplines, and video games is like the sort of ultimate merging of all of those different things. So in 2008, we set up Roll7 as essentially an incubated project that we funded with our own money. And initially, for the first 5 years, we did a whole load of random things. We made games around knife crime for Channel 4. We did a project with, oh, that's better, isn't it? Oh. Yeah, we did projects for clients. We made video games for kids with ADHD. We did things with brain-computer interfaces. I don't know if anyone's heard of NeuroSky. We made a bunch of games with them. And then we sort of did agency work. It was an absolute mottled, weird, creative sort of hodgepodge of things until 2013 when we started making our own content. So I've got my first interlude, which is just a very quick montage of the last 10 years. Hopefully, it will give you a bit of an idea about some of the stuff that we've done. So in about 30 seconds, that's like the last 10 years of my life. It's like I've just died and seeing everything fly past my eyes. So I guess, oh, is that going to play again? Oh shit, I don't want to do that. How do we go back? Ah, okay. So yeah, so the first 5 years was very much doing lots of different projects for other people, but in 2013 we decided that we were going to fire all of our clients in the nicest way possible and just focus on doing our own games. We got to a position where we had some funds in the bank and we really wanted to make our own games and not be at the behest of people telling us how to make games, what to do with games, and we had a prototype, a little skateboarding prototype, which we took to PlayStation, and thankfully Shahid at PlayStation decided that he really wanted this game on PlayStation Vita. We'd never developed anything like that before, and the process was interesting to say the least. And I have another segue into another video, which will give you a bit of an idea of that. This is great. I don't have to talk much. So this was sort of the development of OlliOlli in our office in Deptford in southeast London in 2013. And I just bodged together some footage of the process. So. So that was, I guess, the sort of potted history of making OlliOlli in music video form. But the reality of it was very different. As you can probably imagine, if anyone's made video games here, it's not that. It's not that at all. However, it has managed to be, I guess, the opportunity for our studio to still exist. From a sort of reception perspective, OlliOlli did very well. We've done about 3 million units of the game on a BAFTA here 3-4 years ago, and it's had over 75 awards and nominations between the series. So the game itself has been the thing that's allowed us to kind of continue on in what we're doing. But the reality of making OlliOlli was very different. It was a rather stressful process. We crunched the team to hell and back, and if there's no members of the team here, but I can tell you that what we did to that team, we would never do to a series of individuals again. We worked everyone and ourselves into the ground to make that game. Because we're a small independent studio that has very limited resources and needs to self-publish a video game and put it on a platform that involves not just putting it out, but dealing with what are called TRCs, technical requirement checklists. If anyone's put a game on PlayStation before, they'll know how painful that process can be. But yeah, our office became this quite negative space down in Deptford. There was office politics and stress. But during the process, we actually gave some of the levels to, like, the level development side of it to our creative director. He decided he was going to make those levels at home. And he had something like a 3-hour round trip to get to home and back. And so said, look, guys, I'm just going to work when I would be on, when I would be traveling, and I'm just going to work from home. And I don't mind that. That's cool. I'll just do an extra 3 hours a day. It's no difference to me. And I want to get this stuff done. And it was actually some of the best work that we got on the project came as a result of him being able to focus 100% when he was working from home. And so on OlliOlli 2, we did the same thing with our designer, and we gave him a bit more leeway. And then while we were making OlliOlli 2, we also made a game called Not a Hero. And Not a Hero is a very odd game, and I think it's fair to say we sort of lost the plot a little bit while we were making it, and what you do when you make a game and how you market it. But it was about a weird pink-purple rabbit from the future trying to get elected. And we did that with Devolver for their sins. I don't think they were too happy with us. But we gave that entire development process to John to work from home to do. So we created a small team that we put all in the cloud, and they were just using Skype. Slack didn't exist at that point. They were making the video game just by contacting each other on a daily basis. It was a bit of a hodgepodge, a bit of a production mess, but we eventually got there. And this next segue is about 5 minutes long, so I can probably go and have a cigarette or a coffee or something, but it's a video, a sort of silly, tongue-in-cheek dev video about the process of making Not a Hero, and also how John kind of managed to do some of that from home. So I'm going to hand over to John, our creative director, in his bath.
I'm probably the calmest of all of the people that make decisions on the project. I think I don't worry enough for the most part. I'm quite chilled out. I don't know. I don't think any of the stuff that comes with making video games is worth stressing over. Most of it's just time. You stay in the chair long enough, you'll fix the problem, you'll solve the thing, you'll figure it out. There's no point being stressed. Check.
Many times in the project there's been serious concerns for John's mental health, because he does call you up, very late at night, talking about this purple rabbit and oak trees with guns. And yeah, it's quite worrying actually, especially considering as we've got this split in the studio. On the one hand, we've had OlliOlli 2, which I was producing. We brought in a team, we had a core team of about 7 people. We ran it in a very structured way. We brought management systems in, we used assembler, testing systems, QA. Then on the other hand, we've got this project called Not a Hero, which is being done by John in his pants in his bedroom, surrounded by hummus and quinoa. And quite frankly, I'm not quite sure how it's got to any stage where it can be released.
I made a list in May 2012 of 3 games I wanted to make. One was a tiny skateboarding game, one was a game that used the bow and arrow. Trying to have that kind of tactile physics thing that Angry Birds has, but with the randomly generated dungeon thing that Spelunky had. So it's kind of like trying to combine the two. And I sort of reached a point where I was just drawing on the sprite sheet and I drew a little man with a gun instead. Made a little 2D cover system where this guy can you can pop in and pop out and shoot and pop back again. So Hackathor is a dungeon crawler for morons. There's only 2 buttons, attack and block. It's the easiest, really, really hard game I've made. Basically all you did is walked into a room and a guy either attacks you or you attack him. over and over again until one of you loses like an arm or a face or something. And sometimes you go into a room and there's like a dude in there and you just have a chat with him and he says some weird stuff. And there's like No Face the Necromancer, and there was like this like Indian frog shopkeeper, and there was Sushi Sensei who just talks in like broken haikus and stuff like that.
John had created this piece of code which randomly generated dialogue which we'd use in Hackathon.
And most of their voices were generated by like reading Latin out or like reading Thai out. And the only one that doesn't have proper human voice, and I think that's why he works better, is Bunnylord. And Bunnylord is just the sound of an air-covered door squeaking. And now I've oiled the thing, and so Bunnylord's mute. It's sort of there. Like really quietly. Sad face.
So we took the basic level design from Jeffrey Archer, the slide and shoot cover mechanic from the original You're Not a Hero, and the random word generator from Hackathon, and somehow we've ended up with Not a Hero.
So I'd kind of worked on it on my own for like, I don't know, 8-9 months. And I'd kind of set November as like, I just have to put something out there and see if people actually like this. And I put it out there and just sort of forgot about it. And then John Polston at Indie Games wrote about it, and it got like 4,000 something or other downloads in a day and crashed my server. And then we were like on YouTube, and there's like French people and Russian people and a Scottish guy who was very excited, who were like doing like 20-minute playthroughs of it. And that's how we ended up showing it to Devolver. So Hotline Miami came out, and it was sick, and it was like exactly the kind of game I liked. And we were like, we should just get in touch with them.
So John thought it'd be a good idea to write this ludicrous email to Devolver about getting sexually friendly, hijacking planes, and seeing if they'd be interested in Not a Hero. And for some bizarre reason, presumably because they're thick, they replied to us within a day.
Yeah, and they like basically replied being like, yeah, we've heard about you and we'd like to have a chat, which was kind of a bit like bizarre. And then I remember they finished the email just saying bonus for life. We weren't sure if that was good or bad, but I assumed it was good.
And we knew we had a fun toy, a fun mechanic, but we didn't know quite how to turn it into a game.
We went through this process with Devolver where they were like, Not a Hero is really cool, but it would be nice if there was a reason why you were shooting all these people, because at that point it was just like a sandbox murder simulator.
So John called me up one day to, Tom, I've cracked it. I've got the meta game. There's an anthropomorphic purple rabbit from the future called Bunnylord, and he's come back in time because he needs to save the world. Otherwise something terrible is going to happen, and he hires a series of anti-heroes to do his dirty work for him.
It's time to poke crime in its terrible face. Vote Bunnylord. A violent today for a better tomorrow.
Awesome. So that was Not a Hero, and that was just as painful to make as any other video game, but it was actually the most fun that we had making a video game because we didn't have to see each other on a regular basis, and all of the arguments that we had could be over the phone and not in person. And it was a year late, so that was painful to deal with, but the process of making it and actually working sort of online with that team was something that we really started to get behind, and we were quite excited about this idea that maybe we don't need this dingy office in Deptford, we could just do it all in the cloud and save a bunch of money. So in 2016 we decided, well, John unilaterally decided to destroy our office at the start of that video, so there wasn't much of it left at that point, but we decided that that was it, we were going to get rid of the studio and go totally remote. And I'll kind of come on to a bit more of the reasons why we did in a bit. Our next game was Laser League, which some of you might have heard of, came out in 2018. Laser League for us was a totally different type of game. It was moving from kind of indie pixel games into something a little bit more, I guess, current, maybe AA sort of space. And we created it in a very, very different way, and it's like we sort of matured in our process of making games. I'll play you a quick trailer to give you an idea of what it was that we made, and then I'll tell you a bit about the process. Again, I'm just hiding behind video. This is fantastic.
This is Laser League.
And nobody's heard of it. Has anyone heard of Laser League? Oh, okay, that's a few people. Cool. Has anyone played Laser League? Oh, representative. Thank you. So Laser League development, I could talk about the commercial side of it, but I'll talk about the development side of it. We kind of changed our whole philosophy from just kind of crunching everyone and killing everyone making video games into doing things properly. So we decided that we were going to scale up. Oh shit, our lead programmer's at the back. Oh, I can't lie now. Oh no. Oh, this is awkward. Okay, don't look at his face when I say stuff. So yeah, we didn't kill the team. We did kill our lead programmer, but mainly in general the team weren't killed. We tried not to crunch. We tried to stick to sort of normal hours. We still killed ourselves, and the leads in the project still died a little bit during it, but generally people were a lot happier working kind of remotely, and so this has been, for us, the biggest sort of test, and I'm going to go into why remote work and why have we done this and what does it look like. So when should you be thinking about remote work if it's ever of interest? If you're thinking of setting up a studio, who was thinking of setting up a studio? Yeah, one, two, maybe a few people. If you're thinking of setting up a studio, you don't need an office. You don't need somewhere to make that video game necessarily. So I think that's the main point, and it can be done. If you already have a physical studio and you're thinking maybe about doing some elements remote, I think it's been proven now and de-risked that remote work can work. And maybe if you're thinking about working in the video games industry and the concept of physically turning up to an office every day is worrying, then there are studios that do remote work. So why? There are a bunch of negative reasons why we decided to become a remote studio, but these can quite equally be turned into positive reasons. But for us, it was about turning our studio into quite a negative space as a result of crunching there so much and wanting to kind of have a fresh beginning. But also it was really hard to attract great talent. Like attracting great talent down into Southeast London, into Deptford, 4 or 5 years ago was quite tough. And wherever you are, if you're trying to attract talent, I can tell you attracting talent remotely gives you far more flexibility and quality of people that you can hire is far higher. Cost of travel, office politics, all of these things. They're all negative reasons, but there are positive reasons why going remote is worthwhile. you can have far much more focus when you're working on your own. If you are disciplined, you can be far more focused than you would be in an office space or a studio. From a studio perspective, we were demanded to have a far clearer project methodology by being remote. We couldn't just let people do whatever while they were at home. We needed to have very strict processes and procedures in place. And I'm not looking at my lead programmer at this moment because he's probably giggling. He is giggling, okay. And yeah, individual ownership definitely has something to be said about being given a task and being trusted to get on with it and to crack on with it at home. Everyone is probably aware of all of the tools that are now available. Most studios use these tools internally, but really they're about a new way of working, about distributed development and a kind of a future methodology. And obviously also, if you're not spending £250,000 on an office in central London anymore, then you have more money, which is good, because you always need more money. From a personal perspective, really, this is the biggest win. So if you have a studio and you're thinking, oh, what benefits would there be for remote? For me, it allowed me to move down to Devon, wake up in the morning and go for a surf at 7 in the morning, start work at 9, go for another surf, go for a wander on the beach at lunch. It really does give you that flexibility to do far more of what you want. For my business partner, it meant he could spend more time with his family, take them to school in the morning. And then again, I think I've probably sort of had 2 points here that I've covered in the past bit, but the money save side of things, it works out at about £3,660 a year that you would save on average travel costs. So for your staff, that's a trip to the Maldives every year if they'd like that, or whatever they want to do with that money. For you, it's, again, saving money. And then time saved, it's about 360 hours a year that you get back from wasted travel. So if you think what you could achieve with 360 hours extra in your life, maybe it's spending more time with your family, maybe it's learning a new sport, maybe it's spending more time in bed, as I seem to be doing a lot more of recently. But yeah, you do have a lot more time. So I guess this is about a new working mindset. It's a new philosophy around how we can work, and it does come back to the fact that you can actually trust people. If you find the right people for your studio to do the work, then you can trust them to get on with what they're doing. And I don't buy into Google's campus idea of giving everyone, unlimited amenities in order that they can kind of steal 12, 13 hours of your time to make you work there forever and never leave. I'd rather that people actually had the ability to live balanced lives and work played a part in that, but that it wasn't everything. And I think all of these other things here are really crucial. It means that we can be far more forward-thinking about the relationship between employers and employees or freelancers. So yeah, we are one of the studios that are doing this. There are a number of others. How to do it, and obviously I'm just kind of flying through the basic parts here. If people are interested in some real specifics, then do come and speak to me afterwards, but you need to be really diligent and focused. If you are someone that's just going to dawdle, then working remotely is probably not for you. Or if you're going to get distracted at home by other things, then it's probably not ideal. Using the right tools for the project, making sure that those tools actually fit for purpose for everyone. If you are running a studio, it's creating some clear guidelines about what your expectations from people working on the project are and having that really clear from the off. Stand-ups, physically turning up and meeting everyone together. We were doing it once a month. I think it was probably too little. I think maybe once a fortnight's about right to get everyone together and really have that kind of discourse. And making sure that everyone at home has appropriate office spaces. There was often calls that we had where background noise would be like, I don't know, someone's partner doing a Pilates lesson in the living room, and you're like, that's probably not appropriate. Maybe you need to have an office space somewhere. So yeah, anyway, that's the kind of hows. But again, if you're interested more in kind of the real specifics and deep down how you run that from an HR perspective or a financial perspective, feel free to come and chat to me. There are downsides and risks. I'm sure people who've got physical studios are going, screw you, I love my studio, it's a great place to work, and why would you want to get rid of that? Some people are not necessarily suited to work. If you're really sociable and you really want to meet people through work, then maybe remote's not ideal. There is a risk of hiring people that don't give 100%, but then you're always going to get that risk anywhere. And I actually think that it's probably easier to see that remotely, because if they don't send you anything at the end of the day, then just turning up at the office wasn't sufficient. And yeah, you definitely do lose some of those interesting conversations with people in the team, but I guess you can try and create a culture that will allow for that elsewhere. So in summary, it's really hard to make video games, but you don't need a studio to do it. There's lots of benefits to working remotely, and if you do choose to go remote, make sure you've got a really clear plan for how you do it. If you are thinking of working remotely for other studios, Slightly Mad, remote, I think there are about 150 people. Moon Studios, again, Revolution, I think, are a bit of a mixed bag, and then obviously Roll7, us. And the whole thing's just been a big scam, because I'm just looking for new employees at the moment. But no, we do have 8 new roles at the team. If you want to come and work for Roll7 remotely, and you are either an artist, a producer, or a coder, or some other things that are up on our website, then do hit me up. But thank you for listening to me babble on.
So to say, we do have a bit of time to take some questions. Would like. You don't have to. It's not mandatory. Okay.
Hi. Thanks for that. So I'm actually working in a startup at the moment that's working with another team in Poland. And part of kind of working with those guys, the thing I'm finding hardest is creating a way of working where when I want to talk to someone over there, there's not a big kerfuffle. They need to go find a meeting room. They need to pause their music, things like that. I want, in an office environment, I can walk over and ask someone if they have a second, and if they do, I can just go and ask them a question.
Yeah.
The thing that's been most disruptive to me has been, not having that remotely. Have you found that, and have you found any ways to work around it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for on our project, obviously everyone on the project was remote, and we use Slack as our main sort of point of contact. And the idea with that is that everyone who's on the project is at least checking Slack, and if it pings, then you answer it, right? Or if people are free to call you, it's the equivalent of being sort of tapped on the shoulder. But we had a team, Testronic, a QA team in Poland, who are a fantastic QA team, and they weren't, but we then hooked them into our Slack system, and kind of made some really clear ground rules as to how it would best work with them, and they let us know what would work from their perspective, and we just set it out from the off. And I've heard of studios who do, on top of that, they actually just have a video, there's a video feed on everyone at all times, which sounds a bit invasive, but literally at any point you can just hook into that and have a kind of virtual chat. So I think with things like that, it's about setting clear guidelines and boundaries right from the off with those people, and giving yourself the ability to have that kind of communication and working that in with them. But it's tougher when it's an external provider, because they have their own way of working. So, but yeah, I hope that helps.
Any other questions?
Hi, thanks for that. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you set those expectations and those guidelines for your staff, and maybe how that differs from working in a physical studio?
So from an HR perspective, we do, I guess, quite significant onboarding with people. So we have a staff handbook, which is a remote staff handbook, which sets out clear expectations on everything from work hours, what to do when you go for lunch. It's quite restrictive, because it kind of needs to be, because everyone's remote. But we go through that with everyone. We make sure they're on point with that. If they want to do something slightly different, maybe start a bit earlier and finish a bit later, we work that out on an individual basis. We track everyone on a monthly basis with reviews. You have to manage things far tighter than you would in an office, But the end result of that is actually you have far more information from your staff around how things are going. That's from an HR perspective. From an actual production perspective, we have to be far clearer with our ticketing and our work packages and our sprints around how people actually, are going to complete their work. And so I guess it forces you to be good as producers or HR people or company leaders. It forces us to actually be better, because previously it's very easy to be like, I don't know if we've got time to put together that work package or that design. I'll just chat with Dave because he's at the studio. And that's where confusion just begins. So it does force you to be better at making video games. I wouldn't suggest that we are in any way a best practice for how production works, but we're getting there.
Time for one more question, if anyone has one.
You mentioned that you have mostly people from the UK and that you meet with them in person often. What if you only employed people from all over the world, regardless of where they are, and they just have to speak good English and that's all? Would that work, or what do you think?
We had 2 people on the team who were in Europe. One was in Hungary, one was in Spain. And they made it over once a month. They flew over once a month. But I've heard that with Slightly Mad Studios, who are 150 people, they are fully distributed across the world. I would be nervous about going that far, but it's not out of the question. I think you are definitely going to then lose the ability to have that monthly or fortnightly session. And I think at that point you really are relying even more on the individual being motivated to do kind of what they want to do. Do you work remotely, or no? Just interested. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, well, I think that's all the time we have. So thank you once again to Simon from Roll7.